I've been using Proton for almost 10 years now, which is crazy to think about. I constantly recommend it. I trust it with my own email. They do a lot of great stuff, but even making this video, there are some settings here that genuinely change how private and secure the Proton experience can be. Like now you can disable an authenticator app and only keep security keys, which wasn't a thing that long ago. And Proton Sentinel is this whole new thing that's a bit nebulous, but we'll talk about it. So I'm going to show you all the best settings that you should probably consider for your Proton account to make it as private and secure as you possibly can, as well as the small downstream things that you should also consider to make this the best possible experience to keep you safe online. We're going to start with the account and password page, and we're going to start with the basics, but trust me, it's going to get advanced pretty quickly. You have your login password. This should be strong and unique. Use a password manager. Proton Pass, if you're in that Proton ecosystem, is an obvious pick, but if you'd rather not keep all your eggs in the Proton ecosystem, there's also things like Bitwarden or KeePass that you can also go for. The only thing that you need to do is make sure this is a strong, unique password that isn't used for anything else. So that is really the goal here. Whatever means of doing that is the right way to do it. Now, here's the thing. Traditionally, I've actually used two-password mode. It's going to ask for a second password pretty much anytime you log into any Proton service. The idea here is that your Proton account itself has its own password to access your account, but your actual data is encrypted with a second password. What's interesting is it's a bit polarizing on whether or not this is more secure. Proton itself claims that their new login system is modernized, it only needs one password, and it already derives separate keys for logging in and for decrypting your mailbox. Because Proton doesn't really say directly the advantages of two-password mode, my assumption is that it's designed to prevent a situation where your main password gets in some way compromised, like it's reused or somehow someone gets access to it. Then maybe that second password could be the difference between someone accessing your data or not, but I would argue that's the point of 2FA, and I think that's probably their reasoning as well. These are all my assumptions, and actually, in light of kind of making this video, I've decided to disable two-password mode on my account. All right, so 2FA is probably going to be one of the more obvious things that we talk about on this channel, but you want to make sure you take it seriously. So the obvious thing is to just make sure it's on. That's the most important thing. If it's your authenticator app, whatever it is, get that enabled. I don't even think they support SMS 2FA. Proton themselves has Proton Authenticator. You can actually use it completely offline, independent of a Proton account, or you can use a Proton account and get end-to-end encrypted sync with a dedicated app. But if you have access to security keys, this is the more secure way to do it. As you can see, I have a few of them in there, and you can actually now disable the Authenticator app completely and only use your security key. So that is kind of the maxi approach. So I would say to just get started, everybody should enable the Authenticator app. If you have a higher threat model, you can enable both and start implementing at least one security key, right? At least one, have a backup, so two or more. And then if you want the absolute highest approach, you disable the Authenticator app and only use your security keys to get into your account. Okay, now in the recovery menu, this deserves just a small mention. These aren't privacy security per se, but they're an important part of your account hygiene. So there's password reset options. This is if you forget your Proton password, you can't get in. You have email verification and SMS verification to get back into your account. But very important, that just gets you into your account. It doesn't actually let you access your data. Those are two different things, and that is kind of the difference when you use an encrypted provider. So what you want to do, make sure all of you have a password reset option set up. So if both are off, it's probably good to have at least one backup in mind if you have that option, or you can YOLO it and not have an option. You also have data recovery options as well. So this is a device data backup, which saves an encrypted backup file in the browser, so you can recover your data after a password reset. Remember, these are two independent things you should be considering. And then you can also add a data recovery contact, recovery file, etc. The only thing to flag here is that there is a metadata concern. These password reset options, I do believe, are not as well protected as some of the other things in the Proton ecosystem. So if you are trying to maximize on privacy, just be aware that you are linking some kind of other identifier to the Proton account if you add one of these. And now we're going to go into the security and privacy section. So Proton Sentinel, and yes, as you can see, I'm on a business plans, but most of these things should be pretty much the same for you all on individual plans. This is a new thing that Proton rolled out. It's kind of like lockdown mode for Apple's ecosystem or Google's advanced protection program. The idea here is that they have some AI and human analysis that are watching for account takeovers. This is more of a thing where if you definitely are somebody who has especially like a public presence or a higher threat model, enable it. You have nothing to lose. The one thing to flag, and they do say it here, is that having 2FA or not having 2FA actually changes the sensitivity of Sentinel. And so especially if you're sharing your Proton account with other people or you do weird stuff with like your VPNs and you're trying different browsers all the time, having 2FA enabled on your account, which you should be doing anyway, is going to trigger Sentinel a bit less. So that is a good thing to flag for those of you out there who are going to be doing this. Dark web monitoring is going to do exactly what it says. It's essentially going to flag any kind of emails that are in your account and whether or not they're caught on a third-party site. I think for a lot of people, especially if you already trust Proton, this makes sense to enable. I don't see really the evidence-based reason to not turn these on, unless you just have a preference to keep them off. But I would say for most people, I would leave those on. Session management isn't a toggle, right? But it's a way for you to see that everything that's logged in is actually yours and you're the person who has access to it and controls it. So make sure to treat this seriously. If you're someone with a higher threat model, you can do things like set up a reminder every week to just check your sessions, make sure there's nothing weird there. And if you see anything weird there at the time of watching, you can just click revoke session. Similarly, there's also account monitors and also ways to pretty much keep analytics. I think if you're not on an organization account, you can actually disable this. If you don't want all these logs on your account, you can turn it off altogether. But it's a conscious decision you have to make. On one hand, you're going to get more insight. You get to see if someone's trying to attack your account. You get more data. You can see what's going on. On the other hand, it's just collecting a little bit more data that's tied to your account. Personally, for me, I think the benefits of actually seeing all the login attempts is actually better. So that's my personal choice. I like to see this stuff and I like to be able to diagnose and see what could be happening to troubleshoot things. But if you're more sensitive to this, you don't want to see any of this in your account, then you should be able to disable this. I just can't demonstrate it using an org account, I don't think. And then we have the privacy and data collection section. I think if you want the absolute best privacy, it's pretty obvious. You can just turn those both off. There is a spectrum between invasive data collection and non-invasive data collection, and you are trusting Proton a lot when you use Proton. And so I think the risk here is actually very minimal. But again, if you are trying to maximize privacy, I think the best thing to do is to keep those off. We're going to go back to the settings page in just a second, but the next part of this video is actually talking about sending an email to somebody using Proton Mail. It's important to clarify a couple things here because there are some things that people don't know about. So the first thing, and the good news that's genuinely good, is that all emails between Proton users or anyone using PGP, your message body and everything here is end-to-end encrypted. There has been no kind of incident whatsoever where that kind of data was ever exposed from somebody using Proton. Even Proton themselves cannot read this data. The one thing that Proton is not protecting is the subject lines. Not even Proton to Proton theoretically. So even sending another Proton person an email, the subject line is probably not as protected as you think it is. You're still getting a huge amount of privacy and security with a trusted organization that has its entire business model around privacy. So there's still countless benefits, but that's a real limitation. But it's also not carelessness because this is part of the email standard itself. The subject lives in the header and it's kept readable for things like inbox search and interoperability. So that way Proton can actually work with people who are using PGP. When we contrast this with Tuda, who is another private email provider, they've made the other choice. So they do encrypt subject lines, but they do it by dropping PGP support entirely and using their own encryption. So it's kind of this cost between PGP interoperability versus having those encrypted subject lines. Tuda and Proton both made their choices, and I don't think either choice is wrong. The most important thing is you understand the trade-off, and that when you're using Proton, that is the small limitation when you're using this service. This limitation is also the reason why you're going to get end-to-end encryption with literally anyone on the internet who uses PGP. So that is kind of the trade-off they made, and I think it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Now, one of the things that's really shared around the internet that I think is quite unknown or it's intentionally misrepresented is that using an encrypted email provider only matters if everyone in your life is using one, therefore it's useless because not everybody is using one. But it really glosses over one of the most powerful features in both Proton and Tuda, which is you can encrypt a message to a non-Proton Mail email address. So you can say things like test, password hint, sent on signal, right? That's the best way to do it. You want to send the password to a secure place away from email. Come on, man. Let me at least set a crappy test password. So what this is going to do is you're going to send it to the person. And the person has to literally know the password to actually access the email. That means if I send this to a Gmail address, Google might get the metadata. They're going to see that Henry sent this person an email. They're going to see the subject line, but they're not going to see anything in here. And that applies also to people using Gmail or anything else. So this is a powerful tool that you can utilize when mailing your friends and family. You can also set an expiration time, and that also would work with a non-Proton Proton Mail user as well so that the email expires, or you can send this to just a Proton Mail user and just have it expire and have ephemeral emails, which is a pretty cool concept, I think. Now we're going to go into the messages and composing, which is a similar place as we just were, but this is the settings panel for that. But if you scroll down a little bit, we have auto show embedded images, which I like to keep off. There are some nefarious things that people can use images for. And so this pretty much prevents a situation where someone's going to exploit images and send you things with nasty images in them, and it will automatically show them. So it's good to just keep that off. And that way you can just click show images for each email that you trust. Confirm link URLs is also one of the most underrated things about using something like Proton. That means when you click on a link, it's going to just show you the full link, because a lot of people will do really shady things with links. And so that way you can see the whole thing before saying, sure, I want to visit the link. It's a really good way to prevent phishing. It's a really good way to see if the link that someone included is actually a legitimate link. You can see if there's trackers in the link. So I always recommend enabling this, even though it's one extra click. This is also a very, very underrated one that people a lot of times miss, but in your composing section, you should enable remove image metadata. Images that you take a lot of times can include sensitive data, like where you took the photo, like the exact location. And when you upload that to Proton, it's going to essentially strip all of that metadata from your photo so that you're not accidentally sending sensitive data to other people. So I would recommend enabling this. Now we go into email privacy. I don't know why they have this whole settings panel with 2 settings in it. I think they can move those somewhere else. But block email tracking is really the main setting here. This is going to route remote images through its own proxy, which kills tracking pixels, and it does all of this stuff. Now, one thing I haven't been able to verify is that with this feature, does the previous image setting make as much sense? Maybe we can show embedded images by default now, but I think the safer thing to do is still to kind of target it in both directions. There are different mechanisms, so I think there's something to be said about still blocking email tracking. And when you have this on, you can probably keep auto show images on as well, because that is the proxied images. So these are actually more interconnected than people give them credit for. It's a bit confusing, and I think they could probably improve the way that they communicate this a little bit. But I think for most people, just turn those both on and you're going to get kind of the best results. All right, so now we have encryption and keys, and this is not going to be a PGP guide. I think if you guys want to see that, let me know, and we can make that a part 2 to this, which is like a PGP all-encompassing guide to how to do it, how to share your keys, how to make it work with Proton. We can do that. So let me know if you guys are interested. Their key transparency feature is a pretty interesting thing if you want to enable that. Otherwise, I think that this is probably better left for another video. But if you do know how to use PGP, then this is the place to go if you want to start enabling that with your Proton account. So that way you can use either PGP or just Proton's regular stuff. Now, I want to just do a quick check-in here, because we've done a lot of toggles, but if you don't actually understand the privacy and security implications, and this is actually the biggest issue, then you're going to be a bit lost on what you can expect. Because people see these court cases like what happened in 2021, where there was a Swiss court order that forced Proton to log one account's IP address, and they go, wow, that means this isn't a private tool. But it's like, no, this is just not a tool that guarantees perfect anonymity. At the end of the day, they have never handed over a single bit of email content that was inside of the email that you sent to somebody. That is a huge amount of privacy compared to what you look at what Gmail is doing. So it's really important to understand what Proton Mail is actually giving you. They are giving you end-to-end encryption for your content. The metadata and the downstream impacts of that metadata are going to be where people get really hung up on what the service is actually providing. Now, here's the thing. If you use Proton with a VPN, you're going to get that IP-based protection. They've even argued themselves that if you just use Proton VPN with Proton, ironically, they have to follow different practices and you still would get a lot of IP protection from them. What a lot of people don't really know, though, is that Proton actually runs an actual Onion URL. So you can see this right now on the screen. I just clicked that Onion in Brave browser, but they host Onion sites. So you can literally access all of this. They're Tor project partners. So that is something else that you can really help you with the metadata aspects if you do have a higher threat model with your Proton account. There's also the choice of where you use Proton Mail. You can use it in the web like I'm demonstrating here. It also has an installable PWA that you can literally see at the top here of the page. That's free, it's lightweight, it's customizable with browser extensions, and you can block things with your ad blocker. You can do a lot of cool things, and it also opens PDFs using your browser sandbox, but the code is reserved on every visit. So if you're like thinking about really high targeted attacks, that's something to consider. Whereas when you use a desktop app, it's normally just one installation that you have. But the desktop app is just an Electron wrapper of a web app. So it's not as efficient. And a lot of people don't like the fact that it's Electron based. And it's also not free to use. You have to be on a paid Proton account. Similarly, they have their bridge, which is a native path that works with your typical email client. And then you pretty much handling the encryption with just the bridge client. So I'm not going to crown a winner between those three. Just understand that you're trading things off between them. The last thing that people don't know about is that the way that you pay for Proton is going to be kind of a big deal if you have a higher threat model. So they do take Bitcoin, which a lot of people don't know, but you can pay for Proton using Bitcoin. It's pseudo-anonymous, but especially if you combine it with something like Cake Wallet, which does address reuse and it has other privacy features built in, or really any other Bitcoin that you are somehow able to acquire privately, you're going to get a lot of benefits there. They also support cash. They also should support privacy.com virtual cards if you're in the US and you want to use an aliasing service. And then the last downstream thing that I like people to always think about is their actual devices they're running this on. Make sure that your browsers are kept up to date. You're getting security updates. You're running on modern operating systems. You're downloading the Proton apps from trusted places. Don't get it from random places. Like, what's the point of enabling all these hardcore features if you're downloading unofficial third-party clients compiled by some random person online? So think about these things also downstream, or I guess in this case, upstream, I would argue, for like how you're using the Proton ecosystem. And if you are a more advanced user, you can also look at Apple's lockdown mode and also Google's advanced protection program, depending on which operating systems you're using. But when we put all of this together, this is a fully hardened Proton account. You have a security key, you have Proton Sentinel, you've enabled all the features that makes actually sending and receiving emails a lot more private and secure. You have the ability to add logs to see who's possibly logging into your account, who's not. You also have the information on Tor, hiding your IP, also making sure that you're using Proton with a private payment method. Like, all of these things are going to give you this really holistic way to keep your account much safer than maybe what the default is, which is still very safe, but this is the hardening guide. So I know you guys want to go above and beyond. Now, this video didn't talk about the rest of the Proton ecosystem, but if you guys want to see, I can make a very similar guide that covers calendar, VPN, Drive, etc. So I can show you how to make everything else also just as secure in the rest of the ecosystem. I also skipped over PGP. And so if you guys want to see those things, let me know and I can do update guides for those as well. I also want to thank Proton for partnering with us to make this content possible. Whether or not they sponsored us, I would still like to make this video. I know lots of you use this and I see a lot of weird information online on how to maximize the Proton account. So this is a guide I wanted to make nonetheless. Enjoy your new Proton. Let me know what you guys think and let me know what you want to see next. And I'll see you guys all next time on Techlore.